Hey, good afternoon. It's 4:47 p.m. It is Saturday afternoon, and it looks like it did rain today. As a matter of fact, it's raining right now, and it looks like we have glory water. For those who don't know what glory water is, it's when it rains and the sun is shining at the same time, which some people believe, is an added blessing. It's a symbolism of blessing. So there were times in the past where, I would collect glory water like in a glass, then wait for the day that I would wash my hair and use the glory water for the last rinse. Okay, this is the sort of things that I would do. And if I had the ability to go collect the water that's going on outside, because it is raining and it's bright and sunny, I would definitely do that. But I don't really have time, nor do I have a little receptacle container that I can find easily to get the glory water. But if you're outside right now and you can collect some glory water just for a little extra luck, I would definitely do that. So anyway, I just got home, had to stop off at the store. You know, I just I talked about my depression, and I talked about, what I do in order to balance my mood and how I override negativity, and there's certain times, that I just have to wait things out. Today I woke up with the intention of recording, and then I ended up dealing with, wanting to make a video. So I'm having some stagnation moments, and a lot of it comes from the fact that, I'm trying to feel out my environment right now. I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel safe. And this creates agitation, and it creates depression, and it creates anxiety, and it creates everything else. So everything that goes on around me, makes me nervous, makes me question, makes me jittery. And this is who I am. This is another reason why I like to be by myself, because I like to have 100% control over my environment. That is not being narcissistic, not in this case. It's a way of me protecting myself, because I know that most of the time throughout my life, people who were involved in my life have only came into my life to create some sort of problem, some sort of drama, some sort of negative sting or something. Last week, I had mentioned that my son, had lost his job. And so, right now I'm feeling like, okay, I don't know what's going on. I'm trying to wait to feel things out. I know that I was targeted, and, I understand that this was a network. And I do understand that I believe that my son's employer was associated with the whole, my whole drama. Okay. And so, when I deal with any sort of interaction or anything that happens, it always makes me question. It makes me hyper alert, and it's going to affect my ability to function. Right. And so this is one of the reasons, another reason what is stagnating me as far as, like, finishing my dictation, moving on with my project. A lot of it has to do with mental things. And like I said, the reason why I do not like people interfering with my life is because I want 100% control over my life. I'm tired of people coming in with their life, with their little slights, with their little, strange intentions that they don't have the right to intrude on my energy or my life. Um, like I said, my son lost his job last week, which made me concerned. You know what I mean? And it concerns me for different levels. I would like my son to be able to have the life that I didn't have. It's like these people, Mormons, have destroyed so much of my life. Here at 54, and now my son is 31 years old, and like I mentioned, his hair is gray. And he was put in a situation where he was supposed to take care of his mom, and I do appreciate it. Like when families are loving, we can support each other, okay? But sometimes I think that the network kind of arranged it to where they were just going to dump everything that they created onto my son, which isn't fair. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, she has a son, so therefore, what if my son wanted to marry somebody? What if my son wanted to go out and do things that he wanted to do? It's like they don't care about that. This is why the narcissistic abuse is just so, like, it's unspeakable. You know what I mean? And then here I am, I'm trying to look for work. It's very difficult for me to look for work. I never trust any of the things that I see on Indeed.com, because, it could be where they post jobs and everything, aligns with what your skill level, but they might put it in a different town. So I deal with subtle forms of harassment that come from things like Indeed.com that makes me very uncomfortable to apply for jobs, all because of somebody doing something, putting something in motion that makes me, very uncomfortable. The library that I usually go to is going to be, I think today's the last functioning day that they're going to be open until they reopen after they, reconstructure the library. And so I really don't have anywhere to go to look for work. See, I have a little laptop that I keep on a secondary small bottom desk, a floor desk. Okay, it's actually a little desk that you can, those little trays that you can eat your breakfast on in bed. I have one of those, but I put it on the floor because sometimes I just like to sit Indian style and then work on this little laptop for my projects and stuff like that. And so, what I do is I bring my laptop to the library instead of looking for work on my desktop or something because I don't like doing that. I do not like bringing that energy into my home. I do not like bringing the death threats. That's how I look at it. When I go on Indeed.com, I feel like my life is being threatened. Mainly because, there's some kind of people who like to post job uh, uh, jobs, as a form of harassment, believe it or not. Okay. And I know that in the past, like in the 90s, they used to talk about people who would fish. They used to call it phishing. I think that's what they called it back in the day, fake job advertisements and stuff like that. So you can waste your time, looking for work, especially as a targeted individual. And you never know, if people are playing. To me, those sort of games, you're more, it's a murderous plot, period. I don't think that those things are funny. Especially when people are in need of employment. To me, it's just some sick, sadistic, weird whack job. This is another reason why Rex Laverne deserved to die, because he brought out the worst in people. Okay? He was a demonic piece of shit. Um, but today, as I was came home, I realized, okay, when it comes to me, I don't need much, okay, but I know that people have complained about, my buying habits, and I do believe that the reason why my son was terminated was because of my buying habits, not because, or maybe they may have like, tried to, bully my son because on behalf of me or something. These sick, twisted people. I don't know exactly what their stupid motives there or their whatever. But like I said, I'm over the age of 18, and how I choose to take care of my health is my choice. Like I said, I don't believe in the pharmaceutical industry. I will not touch pharmaceuticals. I will not. Okay, there are times where you have to, like for example, if I had a clogged artery, I guess I would have no choice. But see, I understand there could be personnel members in those hospital facilities that could be highly influenced by this white nationalist movement or this Mormon movement or whatever reason why they feel as though they want to enact some sort of terrorism, or even worse, administer the literal death penalty of maybe injecting me with something or giving me some sort of. I do not trust in the medical industry. Why? Because some medical industries or medical companies or whatever are affiliated with faith-based religions, and even state or county or whatever, they would still have employees that could be crooked. You know what I mean? So I don't trust anything. Do you understand? I don't, I'm very careful about those. It is not unrealistic to be that way, especially when you have people, you know, bringing religion and this sort of stuff into the workplace. This is why. Do you see how toxic that is? Okay. And it's not, and like I said, it has nothing to do with me being against people who want to believe in God or anything. It's nothing to do with that. It's the fact that it gets out of control. It becomes an us versus them thing, and it becomes genocidal. So today I was thinking about my sister, not so much my sister, but I was thinking about my brother-in-law and the relationship that, I'm referring to, Jeff Hughes, okay, and my sister Lisa Hughes. I was thinking about, how this particular family, my adoptive family, was interracially combined, okay, like my sister's married white men. We all had biracial children. And, you find it strange, but see, this is how mind control works, okay? I find it very odd that somebody could marry a black woman, okay? Do I believe that he had Nazi affiliation? Possibly, okay? Some people are affiliated with groups. They're not calling it Nazism, but there's Nazi undercurrents to it, to where, they're not basically coming out and saying white pride, but they're kind of alluding to that. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with being proud of your heritage, okay? But there is when you're trying to create some sort of genocidal plot. And perhaps maybe, I don't know how deep this goes with him, but, were these people, and including my brother-in-law, Jim Culligan, as well as Jeff Hughes, when they met my sisters, were these people deliberately coming into the life to be spies? You know what I mean? The tragic part of it is that, all this time in the 90s, we would all hang out, and I looked at these people as my family. I trusted these people. You know what I mean? Maybe I never was the kind of person that say, hey, I care about you. I hope everything's okay. But there were times where I would sit at night and think about, as we get older, how is my sister Lisa going to be okay? Is she going to be okay? If something happened to Jeff, would she be okay? I cared about these people. You know what I mean? Only for these people to be conspiring against me behind my back. Only for these people to, and enjoy it too. You know what I mean? And what shocks me is, like I said, okay, it's one thing that you married my sister, but you produced offspring, okay? Offspring. And they have very beautiful children. My sister had very beautiful kids. I think a lot of people are usually fascinated with biracial children because they do have literally the best of both worlds. They come out with this caramel color and they're very beautiful. I remember how cute my little niece was, who I loved very much. I loved her like she was my own, okay? And so this is all very devastating to me. How you can see how sick and pathological it is. How is it that you can sit here and be so pumped up with white pride and then produce a biracial child? And then how do you feel about that? To me, that it's so. But see, this is what I'm talking about. People who become deceived by archons and religious. And there's nothing wrong with religion, but brainwashing, things that become dark. You know what I mean? I'm very disturbed that my brother-in-laws were uh, would do something like this, and I understand they didn't really know who I was, but see that kind of adds to it because they only really saw me like when they would come over to my house or visit or whatever with their wives and stuff like that. But I recognized both of these men as my sister's husbands. I always had this weird thing about Jim Culligan and their relationship. I didn't like the fact that he would sit here and try to limit my sister's abilities, and he was another one who had the control over my sister's career or whatever. All of this stuff is very strange to me. It's like I'm now looking at these people that I grew up with, had meals with, prayed for, cared for, sometimes even cried for, and I realized that they cared nothing for me the entire time. That is so disturbing to me. And all the things that I went through that these people were enjoying me go through because of indoctrination. That is so beyond twisted. It literally, of course, I live a very depressive life, all because of, this religion and their twisted need for power, you know. And so here we are now, you know what I mean? I'm hoping tomorrow I'll feel better. I'm very protective of my mood. I'm very protective of my environment. And right now, I'm doing everything I can to be 100% in control of what goes on in my life. Meaning, I do not want to merge other people's problems with my problems. I want people to understand that I need my boundaries right now. Okay, that means, I don't need people, asking me for things that I'm not able to give them. I don't need people, expecting things of me, and I'm not trying to expect anything from other people. Right now, I just need to feel safe, and anything that somebody asks me at this point makes me feel very nervous and suspicious of them. I cannot help but do that. Okay, and just like my son losing his job, that makes me feel very suspicious. Anything that happens to me is the fault of Mormons. It all to me goes right back down to Rex Laverne. It all goes right down to this pathological sickness of these, cult-minded people and everything that dark that happened with it. Everything. That means even if it's somebody that I'm talking to from customer service that might even be in a different state, because this is a widespread program, okay? I do not trust anybody. I don't trust anybody. You know what I mean? Because, this is where this kind of stuff gets out of control. So, of course, it's going to affect me. So, because there's nothing positive in my life right now that's helping me along to keep me encouraged, it takes me some time. So today I wanted to work on my project, but I didn't feel like doing today. Hopefully I had to go outside the house to pick up some stuff. And now I'm back home, and tomorrow I do not have to leave the house. I will see how I feel tomorrow. Okay. But my important thing is like, I don't need people expecting anything of me. That means like asking to borrow money, asking for things I cannot give. I'm not in a position to give people anything right now. I wish I were. You know what I mean? I wish I were. If I was working right now, I would feel better about my situation, because I always feel like these people push me to the wall. These people do things to me on purpose. You know what I mean? Like, do I believe that my son got terminated because of something I did that they didn't like? Yeah, I do. Okay. And I get tired of, people trying to threaten my life. So his last employer in my book, to me, I hope that you end up just like Rex Laverne. That's how I feel. I have every right to feel the way that I do. Every single right to feel the way that I do. Okay. Because I just think I don't have any respect for who you are. And the person who sent over their little commodities from the Mormon church with their little canned goods and stuff like that, you know what? I won't eat them. I did fix, some soup for my son yesterday. And his friends with the commodities. I will not eat them myself, okay? Because in my mind, everything that they do is a form of control. It's a way of them to, and they may have done it because they were concerned about me. But I find it very, odd that the day before my son loses his job, they hand over the commodities. It's like, to me, just stay the fuck away from me. Okay, I don't want any of your food. I don't want anything from you. Okay, I literally, it's like the things that you do are just absolutely disturbing to me after everything. And so I understand that my brother-in-law, Jim Culligan, as well as Jeff Hughes, they fused together with your stupid religious organization. Jeff Hughes used to be a Seventh-day Adventist. My brother-in-law used to be a regular, what they call a typical born-again Christian, right? And I do recall, when I was growing up, my brother-in-law talking about how he didn't like Mormons, okay? But see, this is what I'm talking about, is how brainwashed and, the incentives people are willing to give out or modify their convictions if if the price is right. That I am the kind of person, I don't care what, I'm strong in my convictions because I believe in everything that I do. I believe in my way of living. I believe that I'm right the way that I live. Okay, so I don't care what you offer me. If I feel like it's just not going to jive with me, I'm going to tell you no. But see, most people aren't that strong because they don't have anything strong to live for. But I do. I believe in my life. I believe in my way of life. You know, and so this is how I feel. So I feel like making videos right now is important for me because like I said, well, I'm talking about in my video. The first part of my video is talking about chemicals. The chemicals are brain chemicals, things that can be done to make your brain function in a way where you continually feel those uplifting jolts of energy. So and some of these brain chemicals, like you can get. Like by, for example, exercising or going for a walk or singing a song or doing your favorite hobby or whatever, you might be able to produce several different chemicals like serotonin. You might be able to produce dopamine just by walking. Okay, being able to create or generate more than one mind chemical just by doing these activities. And then and that's my personal care. That's a form of my personal care. Okay, what I do, my activities, how I eat, and that's nobody's business. You see what I'm saying? And it's like, well, because I choose to, go to the store or buy something that they don't like, I smoke marijuana. And, like I said, it's not in my religion to not smoke marijuana. It is legal. You know what I mean? I get tired of people thinking that they can punish people around me on behalf of me. You know what I mean? So I don't care about the person who worked for me, my son worked for. Okay, like I said, anything that causes me emotional upset, anything that happens to me at this point, I'm going to blame it all on that one person, Rex Laverne, and anything that makes me think that they're connected, and I'm rightfully so. Okay, so I'm sure this person will end up watching my video at some point. You know what I mean? Because he was associated with Rex Laverne, at least I believe he was. It's the problems that you cause. Okay, I don't trust you. And so because I don't feel like I can trust anyone, I'm in a panic mode. I'm very, hyper vigilant. And right now I'm very shut in on myself. I'm shutting in the door. I do not want to talk to anybody. I love my son. I always let my son know that I love him and pat him on his head. He's a grown man, right? But see, I think affection is important. In this world, very few people care about your well-being, okay? But it's important for him to know that his mother loved him. It's important to know those things. I know that growing up in my family, and even growing up now, finding out at this age that my mother was like a double agent is very difficult for me to deal with, okay? But knowing that your mother loves you is one of the most important things that you can have. It's a stability to your emotional, well-being for the rest of your life. And yes, I do believe families should, cultivate as much love as you possibly can. So, when I go downstairs and I see my son, I'm always, even though I'm sure he can tell that I'm in a very bad mood, okay, I always want him to know that I care about him all the time. You know what I mean? But right now, I just need to shut down and just be by myself. You know what I mean? I don't want to, I don't want people bothering me for things. And, right now, I don't want to feel overburdened. I feel like I need to protect myself, my mental well being. And, when I have people like Mormons, giving me stuff and then, firing my son the next day, all I can tell you is fuck you. All I can tell you is hope, and I hope that you fucking die. That's how I feel about you. And don't tell me or try to retaliate any further. You know what I mean? I hope that I am done with you. Period, for good. You know what I mean? I am so tired of dealing with you. I do not want to have any more Mormon residue in my life. I can't tell you, me making videos in the middle of the night or feeling depressed or everything. This is a long term, probably the rest of my life, going to affect me by being in your stupid program, by being sucked up in some sort of goal to, conquer the world. When I'm really looking through it, I am seriously thinking, okay, how in the world can a new world order be established? You know what I mean? I'm seriously thinking about that. Now, some people, like I said, it depends on your heart condition. If you're somebody who's very peaceful and you know how to roll with the punches, you know how to make do with things, I could deal with that. Okay, mind you, I don't want to stay on the earth once it transforms or whatever. I don't. I figure once I get to the age I want to die naturally. Okay, I'm going to tough it out of this piece of shit the way I'm supposed to. But once I leave, I don't want to come back. Whether it's all wonderful and perfect or not, I don't. Okay, because and like it this place is such garbage, such garbage. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like unless I can be guaranteed that I could even steal. I mean, to me, you can't trump heaven. You can't. You know what I mean? I think it talks about in the Bible how people these beings wanted earthly bodies and all this other stuff. Maybe because they wanted to engage in earthly things, but the things that you engage in on here on the earth, I mean, looking at the flowers and stuff like that is wonderful. One of the things that I love here on earth is clothes, accessories, makeup, all that stuff. That's knitting, sewing supplies. I enjoy those things. Beautification of my space. Those are the only things I care about on this earth. And then, of course, the nature around it: grass, trees, birds, flowers, that kind of stuff. Okay. A lot of people, to me, aren't worth anything. They're really not. Okay, I mean, when I think about earthly life, I think it's a place of suffering. You know, it's just suffering. So right now, I am doing everything I can to protect myself. I do not want to have any sort of mental upsets. But yeah, it did bother me when my son lost his job because I felt as though here we go with Mormons again. Here we go with Mormons again. Okay, trying to get rid of people, exit people from the workplace on issues that they really shouldn't. Okay, and of course they're going to cover it up and sweep it under the rug. And right now, what it is, it's another dump on me. It's another strike at me. Because all of this snowballs onto me. Okay, I don't like worrying about my son. I want my son to feel stable in life. I want my son to have a better life than I did. Okay, you already ruined that. He's already 31 years old. Okay, I cannot tell you how much I hate the Mormon Church. I hate him. Okay, I absolutely despise the Mormon Church. I walked past it today and I was thinking, how in the world is that building still standing? Okay, that's how I feel about it. And it's like nobody can say, "Oh, Maria, you got to change your." Don't you dare okay, tell me that I need to change my attitude towards something like that because the Mormon Church is not God. Okay, my devotion is in the right place. Okay, so anyway, I'm just kind of going on, but yeah, those are the thoughts I had today, and I wanted to share them. What else do I want to talk about? Let me see. Yeah, I think hopefully tomorrow will be another day. I don't have to leave the house. And yes, I do buy bottled water. You know, even though here's the thing: when it comes to food, we never know what kind of tampering goes on in our food. I will not drink. I do not. I try to avoid fluoride as much as I possibly can. I do not like fluoride, nor fluoride products, because I understand fluoride, it was something that the Nazis gave people, okay? So I don't want fluoride in my water. So I try to buy bottled water, okay? And some people might, I might go to the store and buy bottled water. They're like, oh, she's buying, she should just be, here's some Mormons. Oh, she needs to just be drinking. I am trying to protect my health, okay? So I choose the bottled water. That's why. As if that's any of your fucking business. Okay, that's my choice. But of course, the Mormons want you to drink the bottled water. You know why? Because they want you to die. That's why. Okay, I don't fucking care about your canned goods and all this other stuff. Okay, but yeah, I think a lot of things are poison. You know, like even things like fresh fruit and vegetables, which is something that I choose to have. Right. You know, I think about pesticides and stuff like that that they spray, and all I can do is the best I can. You know what I mean? But I understand my mood sags, so I try to eat things like beans, beans and rice, um, pasta. You know what I mean? And I don't really spend a whole lot on dinner and stuff like that. But I would say that if I was working, I would probably buy more variety, right? You know, I would definitely do that. But unfortunately, you know, I'm on a tight budget these days. So, but I have my reasons for why I choose what I choose. Okay. And to me, it's like, I feel sometimes that they try to exert their control. I don't need anything, you telling me how to do anything at this point. And see, sometimes people give you things to be helpful. Like I remember I used to be, I don't know, I hope she was my friend, but we don't know. I used to remember, I remember a lady that I used to know in Cal City who, you know, would come by and give me commodities because she used to pass out commodities. Commodities, that's a formal word of like saying like, you know, food care packages, you know, things like canned goods, breads, you know, things that people, staples that people generally have in their household. And she would give them to me. Okay. But see, the reason why I don't like getting things from the Mormons is because I remember being in the Mormons menticide program. I remember being bullied. I remember people trying to force me into a certain lifestyles or change my habits. So when they give me something, I keep thinking, okay, what are you trying to tell me something? Okay, do you understand what I'm talking about? Like when relationships, whether that be with a group or a person, could defile or do something that abused you so much that now you no longer want to have anything to do with them, or you're going to be put in a situation where you question everything, every motive that they do. That's how it got with the Mormons, and that's why it had to end. That's why I did not want any sort of thing because you defiled the relationship. You made it so to where I can no longer trust you, your motives, and anything that you do. Period. From any of your members. Okay? Because that's how deep it's gotten. Okay? So I'm trying to tell people about how things that they can do that just goes too far. That you went too far. See, when I was thinking about the story in the Bible about Judas Iscariot, and that story used to always interest me. I've always thought the whole story about Judas and the betrayal of Jesus in the Bible was very fascinating to me, right? As a matter of fact, I love rock operas, and I actually wanted to write my own rock opera. Yes, I love rock operas, okay? And I actually wanted to star in a rock opera. I was like, okay, I could either be Mary Magdalene or I could be Judas Iscariot. Now, Judas Iscariot, that's I just because I love Jesus Christ Superstar, and I always wanted to sing a part in the play, whether that be, he did a remarkable job in singing. I saw the guy who was a part of that one band. It was a black rock band called Living Color. He played Judas Iscariot in the live version that I saw of Jesus Christ Superstar. It's fucking amazing. I love that movie. Anyway, but the whole issue of Judas, okay, aside from Jesus Christ Superstar, which is like really cool, all right, but when I think about Judas, though, in the Bible, okay, Judas betrayed Jesus, and it was like something that he could have changed. He didn't have to go that route, but he knew what he was doing. It was deliberate. It was deliberate. So he's out here and all this time watched Jesus and talked to him and smiled in his face and flattered him and all this other stuff. And then he turns around and betrays him. Okay. He became disgusting. Okay. It's like, how dare you with your filth? I mean, it's too much. Some betrayals are too much. And that betrayal of what the Mormons did to me collectively as a group, okay, disgust me to the point that's how I feel about them. To me, they're my Judases. Okay, they're like my Judases. And I'm sure there's individual people who are repentant, right? Who are sorry, they didn't mean to get wrapped up into it. But anything to me rumor related is a trigger to me. So when it comes to like, my son losing his job, after knowing that, to me, anything that these people do is a deliberate, and I question it, and I'm not comfortable with it. So I don't want any more of your bullshit. Okay, and maybe he didn't realize what he was doing. Maybe because I did a video talking about what did I talk about? Dual affiliations. Maybe he saw that video and he realized, oh, I got to do something, or he felt guilty or whatever, and decided to let my son go. Okay, just let you know, do not, if whatever happens, whatever's going on, I am definitely going to make a fuss about it. Like if my situation doesn't improve, I'm going to keep talking about this issue. I'm never going to shut up. I am never going to shut up. Never. Okay. I want my life to change. I want my life to get into a positive state. And if it doesn't, I'm just going to keep going on. I'm not going to stop. Okay. And I do feel very threatened by what you did. And I don't trust you. And the guy who gave me the commodities, fuck you, even if you meant it well. Okay. Because this is how it's gotten to this point. Okay, and hopefully you will learn the lesson that you do not treat people in the manner that you do. Okay, and you need to behave about, you think about your actions before you do it. Like I said, you could have had well intentions when you gave me that food. Okay, but because you have made a big effort to try to put me in a situation to make me feel like I was mentally deranged, you've gaslighted me, you've done everything. Your intentions are always going to be questionable to me. It is what it is. Because what? It's defiled. You defiled me. Either you defiled the relationship or any possible way that I could ever have respect for you. Okay, and I feel, and sadly, I feel the same way about my ex-family. Like when I start thinking about how is it that I could sit here and play games with my family, talk to them, get Christmas gifts, laugh and talk and all of the other stuff. And meanwhile, they were completely indoctrinated by a church to set me up possibly for murder. And see, I was thinking about, the deranged definition of their marriages, their forced marriages, and why. And I'd mentioned how, Sarbanes-Oxley influenced me to add more into procedures. Now, when I create my own procedures, okay? Why? Because there's times I've been working for companies that, they were just family-owned businesses. They don't think about security measures, okay? But you know what? I do, because I generally work in accounting, right? So there's been times where I work for companies where they are okay. They're, you know what they do? They don't see anything wrong with me keeping checks in my desk. They don't see anything wrong with me keeping checks in my desk and, a print, what do you call it, a signature block and everything. And believe me, I would never, fraudulently do anything with their checks, okay? But my point is that because they don't see the necessary steps in there, I do. Because I am somebody who is in accounting. I consider myself an professional. So what happens if maybe one of their family members, being in a family business, comes in and takes one of the checks and writes it, right? Who are they going to blame? They're going to blame me, right? Okay, so then I create check logs. I do things to protect myself too, because these sort of things aren't in the procedures of family-owned businesses. So what I've learned, I implement for myself, right? Because it's a part of my professional package. Okay, this is what makes me the ideal employee. Unfortunately, I never seem to get those sort of opportunities, right? But this is what I'm talking about, being a complete package, being a professional package, okay? But when it comes to Sarbanes-Oxley, I'm thinking about, I've always liked making manuals, always liked making like step-by-step manuals on procedures. But when I started, had the opportunity to be trained on Sarbanes-Oxley, which inspired me to buy books about Sarbanes-Oxley, right? Because I wanted to know more. I wanted to be a part of my professional package. It's more, it's not just procedures on how to do things. It's procedures on taking protective steps, trying to think about how each process works and seeing, is there a possibility for fraud to creep into this particular step? Or is there any possible way that outside influence could get hold of this information, which I thought was a valuable skill, right? But I keep thinking, how that could be added, not just to financial stuff specifically, but could be across the board in different things, which is what I talked about a couple of nights ago about, how do you clean up the issue of human trafficking? Okay, and the first thing that I'm thinking, what happened to me, how do I see how this works? The dual affiliation, the people in positions that go to the same church, that hang out with the same group, the people who have developed an us versus them thing. So when you send off your resume, that person's getting your resume and they're making it sure it doesn't go higher up to the chain of whoever needs to see it. They are there as gatekeepers to keep you away from the people in that organization that you need to communicate with. See, this is one of the reasons that targeted individuals do not find jobs. This is the reason why, because they allow certain things to be posted, fake jobs to be posted online. That they need to clean that kind of stuff up too. And I know back in the days of the 90s when I worked for the government, well, it really wasn't a government, it was like a part of the government from CSC. They had certain requirements as to when they were posting jobs. Okay, they had certain requirements as to how long they were going to post that job, and they did not post fraudulent. Some companies will post fraudulent job offers, right? And they'll do it because they feel like, oh, I'm going to just go ahead and save these applications for later or whatever. Some people are doing it for the purpose of human trafficking. For real, for real. Okay? So, and they're doing it not because they intend to have this person trafficked. They may just want to bring that person in for a job interview so they can harass them in some way. Okay? Or cyber bully them in some way. This, like, for example, I talked about the job offers that, sound like they would just be right up my alley. Unfortunately, they might be in a different town. Okay, so it becomes a matter of people doing things that are unethical. And why are they doing things that are unethical? Because they are part of these groups. They are part of these groups. Okay. In the past, in the future, if I do go on Indeed.com, and I suspect that these people might be, because some of these companies that have posted jobs, I remember seeing them or applying to their jobs before. If I see them again, I will post them on YouTube to let you know these people are entertainment trafficking. I will let you know. Okay. And also you feel free to report these sort of things, like on things like Glassdoor, because people need to be aware of what companies to avoid. They really do. People don't need to waste their time looking for work. You know what I mean? And people thinking that it's okay. We are living in a time where lives are being threatened. And if you have that kind of time on your hands to play those kind of jokes, something is wrong with you. Like I talked about mental illness, people who have these mental problems, stuff like that. If you are not a part of the problem, do not feel sorry or bad about yourself or feel like, you should be ashamed to cry. Okay, you're not the one causing the problem. It's the weird people who think it's okay to post fake job ads. It's the weird people who want to punish people for what their family members do that they don't like. Okay, it's this weird mentality of people who do things that are illegal, who deserve to be the ones who are crying. Okay, not you. Okay, but I do understand, that the moral reset is and really when I think about the moral reset, hang on a second, let me just get hot here. Hang on. When I think about the moral reset, in terms of, what's legal and stuff like that, it shocks me. It shocks me sometimes to see how very little people know about safety, protecting themselves, just general knowledge that, to me, I remember knowing about when I was a kid. I remember I thought it was shocking when I had this conversation with one of my playmates, okay? And we were talking about, listening to music in the bathroom. Because I used to listen to music on the bathroom, especially like on Sundays. I would want to take a bath on Sunday, right? And my idea of a luxurious bath was Mr. Bubble and having to listen to like things like the Dr. Demento show, right? And so I would have the radio on the countertop, and I would just kind of be hanging out listening to music on in the bathtub, right? And we were talking about, I was telling my acquaintance that, if we were talking about electricity and, the fear of being electrocuted. And she was like, I was telling her, what would happen if if a radio fell into the bathtub. And we were like teenagers at this time, right? And she kept looking at me like, are you serious? Like, you could get electrocuted? And I kept thinking, your mom never told you that? You know, it's these little things that, to me, I'm like, do parents even care about their kids? How is it that you can be a teenager and not know that electricity mixed with water could kill you? You know, it's these weird things. Like, you know, people don't seem to care about things, but I do. But anyway, so yeah, that's my mood today. I'm just kind of like trying to get in the right mood. I'm understanding my emotional needs, meaning I understand that I'm very closed in on myself right now, feeling that I need to protect myself, feeling that I need to protect myself from further emotional trauma, further emotional abuse, because I will tell you, these Mormons will never stop. Okay, do I feel abused by them letting my son go? Yes, I do. You know, and whether he was doing it, even if he was doing it nicely or he was doing it whatever, it's just a fact. The whole fact is that, you know, my son's 31, and it's like his shit should not be wrapped up in mine, meaning like, you know, do I believe that they arranged it to my son was supposed to move in with me? Yes, I do. They will never tell me that, but I do believe that. And I am angry that somebody would have some sort of covert program and use one of my family members. You do not do that shit. Okay. So anyway, I'm very unhappy with the dishonest people that I have in my life. Okay. And I feel very, like I said, very protective of myself right now, as well as my son. Um, I never wanted my son to have to care. I mean, have to, devote so much of his time and his life. You know, I was always prepared to take care of myself. You know what I mean? What I would like is that my son had his own place, had his own life, was enjoying his life with people that were quality people, decent, honest people. And then my son find people that he enjoyed, and maybe somebody, a nice girl that he could, enjoy time with or something would be nice. I am not pressuring my son into getting married. Okay? I'm not pressuring my son into doing that. Okay, but if he chooses to have a partner or something like that, then and that's somebody who's really going to give him the affection and love that I feel like he deserves, and I'm all for it. You know what I mean? But I definitely want my son to have his own enjoyment and not feel bogged down by obligations that are unnecessary, because I'm a grown woman and completely able to take care of myself. Okay, I mean, I understand. I all I care about, and I understand in life, the important thing is to have the best quality life you can. You know, and it's all within your control. The stuff that's in your control. Okay, hopefully, with my things that I'm writing, and things that I can help encourage, that the work culture will improve. Okay, I will say that, a lot of people that you work for, they do not know how to manage people. Okay, a lot of the work culture is just this. I'm a result. Okay, you see how unhappy I am. You see how mentally sad and, just messed up I am. Okay, and I'm supposed to be like a deity. I'm supposed to be, strong. I'm supposed to, if it affects me, think about what this does to, like, normal people. Okay, so yeah, the work culture is toxic, and it's dangerous. What it can do to people mentally. And so, when I find methods to cure my, or help ease my mental illness, and then you've got the Mormons with their stupid shit like, well, she needs to do this, and no, that is how I take care of myself. Please get out my ass already. You know what I mean? Yeah, every time I go by the Mormon church lately, I just been like, oh, But I, I'm a decent citizen. I'm never going to do anything like that. But do I hope and wish for it? Yes, of course. I'm not going to sit here and like cast a spell on them or anything like that. I'm not. Okay, but you know, um, I'm definitely unhappy with the mind control and the bullying tactics and the hurtful things that they've done. You know what I mean? And the way that they try to manipulate my life and try to bring my life down to their level to be acceptable to them. You know what I mean? It's already bad enough that these people have ruined people's work life, okay? And then they want to come into your house and ruin it. You know what I mean? To me, it's like, that's so highly demonic. You know what I mean? When people want to get like down into your psyche, that is just like, you are full on like demonic. That's why every time I see stuff like transhumanism and cyborgs and shit like that, I turn that shit off. You know what I mean? It's like, what are you trying to do to human beings? It's strange, okay? It's very strange. What else do I want to talk about? Yeah, I'm hoping I'll be in the right frame of mind. But it's important for me to have the right frame of mind. This is where I'm talking about boundaries. Boundaries. I'm trying to let my son know, hey, right now I'm mentally tapped. Okay, just any little thing that goes wrong is going to send me off into something. I cannot handle things right now. So I'm trying to encourage my son to handle stuff that he needs to handle. And I know that my son was really nice and he paid my phone bill. I don't expect my son to pay anything else right now. Okay, I expect and really I don't even like him doing that. Okay, but I'm very grateful for it. Okay, he knows that I'm emotionally fragile right now because of the things that these people have done. He knows it. Okay, and I don't want to go into it because I know he can't talk about it. He's not allowed to. And see, the thing I hate about these people, you had no right to create this sort of drama in my life. You had no right to cause this sort of tension and this sort of problem within my family dynamic. This is why I hate Mormons. Okay, this is why I hate that demonic shit. You do not, your family is supposed to be sacred, period. Okay, and you cared nothing about that. Okay, and then also the whole idea that some of these people were trying to, put in the mind some sort of racial ideology into my son's head. Excuse me. You know what I mean? Dangerous people, very dangerous. You know what I mean? In my world, in my home, I don't sit here and obsess about color. I've had white people treat me like nothing. Okay, and I have never tried to strike back to these people. I've never tried to hate white people collectively. I'm trying to understand. I try to understand where they're coming from. You know what I mean? There are some people that, do I think white people do, the Mormon people who did what they did? Yeah, you're fucking evil. That's why I had no problem, wishing Rex Laverne dead. That's why I every day I wish I would see that. I would love to see his brain splatter on the wall, like the chunks just like smearing all over the wall. Good, because that's all that anger that needs to be directed towards you. You have caused so many problems. But then you gathered around and you associated, or he associated with people who were just as angry and frustrated with their lives and unhappy, and so they felt good about enacting this sort of stuff, including my brother-in-laws. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, when it comes to people, I'm done. I'm done. You know what I mean? I have given people my love. You know, and it's like, to me, give love to people who deserve it. Not everybody deserves your love. They don't. Love is a very sacred thing, and it's a beautiful thing. It really is. You know what I mean? I love my son. In a world that is cruel, I hope he understands that, in a world that's cruel, having a mother who loves you is important, because a lot of mothers do not love their kids. Period. And it shows, like, I can't tell you how sometimes I hurt on behalf of some of the kids that get verbally abused by their parents. I hear it sometimes. You know what I mean? I remember one time back in the 90s, I was at a friend's house. We were hanging out, doing, young adult stuff, drinking, right? And our kids were in the other room, we were talking, and then she called her son, and every time she'd call him an idiot. Idiot so-and-so, come on over here. And it would just bring the mood down. It's like, why would you do that to your son? Do you know what you're doing to your son? Do you know you're painting his world to make him feel like he is useless and he's never going to accomplish anything? You, as his parent, are telling him that he is an idiot, that he's worthless, and that he's nothing, and he has no chance in the world. So do you honestly think that he's going to go to school and put forth his best effort? He doesn't care anymore. Just by you telling him that, calling him that, treating him like that, he does not care anymore. And so you're going to sit here and try to put pressure on him while he's not doing good at school. He doesn't care already. You already ruined it for him. So it's like, I see people do stuff and it's just absolutely cruel. And this is what I'm talking about. It's like, people do not care. And you know what? She was one of those people that got money for her kid through welfare. And that was what he was good for. You know what I mean? So yeah, when I think about the world, it makes me sick. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up this video. I think I've said enough. If I feel like I'm in the mood to talk about other stuff, I'll ramble on for another 50 minutes. I got some time today. Anyway, for now, I'm going to wrap it up. So I hope you all have a good Saturday and take some time to enjoy yourself. Take care.